everyone, this is Tsuki. Today I just wanted to talk about the Astrologian. It's been 3 weeks since early access began, which means there's been 3 weeks to get some experience on Astrologian. It was actually the first class I leveled 260, and I pretty much experienced all of the content leveling up and at max level with it so far. So there's something some things I'd like to talk about the Astrologian, because it definitely is a little bit underwhelming compared to the other two healers, and it definitely has its weaknesses. And I just wanted to go over all of our abilities and changes that I'd like to see happen. Not necessarily changes that will happen, but things I think the Astrologians could benefit from, because yeah, we have it quite hard compared to the other two healers. Now this isn't going to be a full-blown guide or anything. I will be looking at all of our skills and how I'd like to apply them and best use them in certain situations, but this will not be a full-blown guide, and also it is not scripted. This is all going to be one take live commentary, so if I mess up or it isn't as smooth as it should be, I apologize ahead of time. So without further ado, let's get into just looking at our abilities. The first one we have Malefic, deals unaspected damage with a potency of 150. Pretty basic. This is your Stone 1, your Ruin 1, basically equivalent, and it does damage. That's all you really need to know. And again, we're going to be looking at these abilities as if you are max level, which is 60. So if there's any bonus traits, we're going to go over those as well. Benefit, this is your bare bones heal, just like Cure and Physic. The thing you will notice though is that it only has a Cure potency of 380, which is 20 potency less than Cure and Physic, which are 400. And that's going to be a recurring, I guess, theme that you're going to see when we're looking at all of the heals Astrologian has, is that their potencies are slightly lower than their counterparts on the other two healers, but we'll get to that later. Combust, it's a dot spell, basically just like Arrow. It actually doesn't have a base damage to it, which means that it can bypass accuracy requirements, which at level 60, as you can see, we have no bonus accuracy on our gear. Yeah, so you can actually miss a lot. I've missed a lot in dungeons, just normal dungeons before, so that is something to keep in mind. Light speed. This is sits on a 2.5 minute cooldown, and it reduces the cast time of our spells by 2.5 seconds while reducing magic potency by 25%. Now what this means is that you can pretty much instantly cast most of your spells, yeah, so most of these are cast 2.5 seconds. I think we have a few 3-second casts. I think only Aspected Helios, yeah, 3 seconds. But I think actually if we use this, just because of pure latency, you can actually end up finishing the cast. Let's try. So yeah, you can still use things like this, like moving. Basically it'll reduce it to about 6 seconds or 5.5 seconds instead of the normal 8 seconds, so you can't just bypass and instant cast this with light speed. Now the problem with light speed is a very situational cooldown. There's only one time where light speed will be a good thing to use, and that is in very high mobility phases of a fight, which there really isn't many good places to use this. Now the problem with this again is that it reduces your magic potency by 25%, so that means your attacks, Malefic and Combust, and all your heals, all of them will do 25% less potency, which means it'll lower your heals. So this is not a healing cooldown, because if you compare it to something like, the thing I like to compare it to is Presence of Mind for White Mage, which reduces or increases your spell speed. It doesn't actually reduce anything. This only gives you a small burst of healing for the first 2 casts that you cast. And what I mean by that is because when you cast this, you're going to get 1 spell at the beginning of the cast, and another at the end of your global cooldown. So it will give you 2 casts in the time it would have taken you to just hard cast 1 spell. So, and both of those spells are going to have 70 or 25% of its potency lost on it. So it's going to be 2 weaker spells instead of 1 just whole spell. And after those first 2 spells are gone, it's not a healing cooldown anymore. It's no longer a burst of healing. All it will do is it will front load basically your spell at the beginning of your global cooldown instead of the end. And your global cooldown isn't reduced at all, so still take 3 seconds or whatever the global cooldown is, 2.5 seconds to go back around so you can cast your next spell. So you can't just go around spamming spells for 15 seconds. So yeah, it's not really a healing cooldown at all, and I never use light speed. Like, I can't think of a single moment where I've used light speed in a serious manner before, because it's not a very good cooldown at all, and it's not a healing cooldown, and I really hate that. I really feel like this spell could use some work. And also, if you activate light speed, it lasts 15 seconds, which is quite a long time for something that lowers your heal potency, which means that once you're done, like if you actually find a spot to use this where it's movement intensive and you need to cast heals while moving, once you're done having to move, chances are it's not going to take a whole 15 seconds. You're not going to have to be moving constantly for 15 seconds, which means that in order to get back your normal like whole heals without the potency loss, you're going to have to manually click this off in your buffs, which is it's a pain. So I don't like light speed. I think it definitely needs some work. I feel like they could change this so that it maybe has a longer cast or longer cooldown and a shorter duration, and it just completely gets rid of the 25% reduced potency. So have it sit on maybe like a 3-minute cooldown or maybe a 5-minute cooldown and last only like, I don't know, 5 seconds or something, or maybe 10 seconds. Just change it so that it can actually be a healing cooldown. Because right now I don't like it, but whatever. Let's move on, because we've already spent like 5 minutes on this. So luminiferous aether. I totally butchers that, but let's move on. Basically, this is your Shroud of Saints, but you get it at level 8 instead of level 38 that white mages get it. As a refresh, potency of 80, so I think that's exactly equivalent to white mages, and it reduces your enmity generation. Now that is different about Shroud. Shroud halves your enmity, so your current enemy will be halved with Shroud of Saints. This one reduces your enmity generation, so anything you use while this cooldown is going will be reduced instead of having your enmity. So that's something important to keep in mind. This is actually your only built-in job-related way of recovering your MP, which is really unfortunate because Astrologians actually have more MP problems than white mages because their heals are lower. And yeah, and actually white mages got more abilities to help them manage their MP. They got a size. So that's a problem. I think, well, I guess you have your cards to help with your MP, but we'll get on that later. Helios, this is your Medica equivalent, restores your MP and HP of all nearby party members. Cure potency is 290 instead of 300 like Medica is. Ascend, basically raise. There's really nothing. It's the exact same thing as raise or resurrection. Ascensional dignity, this is actually one of the best skills that Astrologian has. It restores the target's HP, cure potency is 400, recast time is 40 seconds at level 60. It is also instant cast, and this is an ability, so costs no MP. And the bonus is that the potency increases the lower the target's HP. So ideally, you want to use this on targets with lower HP. So the way I like to use it is while I'm doing damage, while I'm in cleric stance, putting up dots, using gravity and stuff, and letting my tank purposely dip pretty low. I'll use it to help give it back up, and then spam some benefics or some aspect benefics too to sort of help catch up. Now you can use this while the target's HP is relatively high, so like 70%, and it can still do some decent heal, but preferably you want to use these on targets that have preferably lower than, I'd say, about 40% heal, which can be ballsy. I mean, the lower you go, the higher the potency can be, but you don't want to flat out let them hit too low, because this isn't benediction or anything, and 400 potency plus the potency you get is a lot, but it's not going to be enough to just flat out make them get back to full HP. So you don't want to go too low, but you also don't want to use it too high, otherwise you'll just end up wasting this. Another thing to keep in mind, this is an ability, so Warrior's Defiance does not affect this, because Defiance only affects spells, healing spells, not abilities, so that's something to also keep in mind when you're healing warriors with this. Exalted Detriment, this is your Suna or leeches, same thing, does the exact same thing. Stella, I honestly don't use this. It deals some damage, 100 potency, and it applies a heavy, 40% heavy. I don't like using it because there's not many applications to use this on. I think if it was maybe instant cast or just like an ability, like Fluid Aura, where you could just cast it like once every 30 seconds or 60 seconds, it would be better. But I honestly don't even have this on my hotbar, so yeah, I don't use it that much. It would be a very good utility in certain fights though, like maybe turn 5, but when are you ever gonna go back and do turn 5, right? Benefit 2, basically Cure 2, your equivalent of Cure 2, except that it is only 620 potency instead of 650, which is 30 potency less. And yeah, lower potencies, like I said. Draw. So this is going to be the first skill you get, which sort of ties into the main, I guess, core of Astrologian, and that is your divining deck. And you'll have 6 cards. We'll talk about those later, as well as all the other abilities that you have relating to your deck. This sits on a 30-second cooldown, but again, we'll talk about this more in depth later. We're just going to skip over the abilities that retain to your deck for now. Diurnal Sect. So you have 2 sort of stances that you can be in, sort of like how tanks have their different stances. This one will increase your attack speed by 5%, so basically your cast times will be increased by 5%, and adds a regen effect to certain abilities. Now there are 3 abilities that get affected by your sect or your different stance, and we'll go over those as we find them. And the first one is actually right here, Aspected Benefic. So this, while you're in Diurnal Sect, will cure you for 100 potency, and will add a regen, which is let's see, where is it? No. Is it? Okay, yeah. So your base heal on this will be 190, and it'll add a 100 regen per tick that lasts 18 seconds. Now, this is also instant cast, by the way, which is why it costs so much more than just your normal Benefic as well, is because it's instant cast. So that's pretty nice. It also has a base heal actually attached to it, as opposed to White Mage's regen, so that's also pretty nice. I definitely like using this to sort of help while I'm in DPSing the regen or the shield, because in Nocturnal, we're just going to skip over to Nocturnal Sect because we need to know what this does so we can talk about these better. So Nocturnal Sect increases your healing magic potency by 5% and adds a shield basically to the spells. And Aspect Benefits increases the cure potency to 250 and adds a shield equaling the amount that you cured. Now, unlike Adloquium, which is what you're going to be comparing this to, or we are going to be comparing this to, if you crit, it doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't double the shield or anything, which is very unfortunate. But yeah, there's really nothing we can do about that. And you can see why, because if you did crit with this, because it's instant cast, and if you could crit with it, it'd be way overpowered. So I can see why they didn't add that effect. But because of that, Nocturnal Sect is pretty underwhelming, but we'll get to that later. Royal Road returns the card you drew to your deck to give it a bonus effect on the next card you draw. Again, we'll talk about it later. Disable reduces the potency of the target's next action by 10%, sits on a 1-minute cooldown, and lasts for 10 seconds. So basically, you can use this on hard-hitting abilities to sort of reduce it. So something like Twin Tonia's Death Sentence or Titan's Mountain Buster. Basically, it's kind of like Virus, I guess, but it only lasts for 1 attack, which means you have to be pretty careful when using this, because you could end up using it and then the boss will auto attack and then hit full damage on the big attack you were trying to use it on. So you have to time this pretty carefully, and it actually requires quite a bit of knowledge on the fight to use properly. So, but when you do use it, it can help. I think it is a good utility, but to have a minute cooldown and only work on 1 attack, you know, I'd rather have a Virus, honestly, but that's just me. Spread lets you store a card, basically. Again, we'll talk about that later. Aspected Helios, similar to Aspected Benefit, it is a AoE heal that is affected by your sect. Basically, it's a Medica 2 when you're in Diurnal Sect, and it's a Succor while you're in Nocturnal Sect. So it does 140 potency, cure potency, and a regen of 50, which, when comparing to Medica 2, Medica 2 does a base heal of 200, I believe, so that's 60 potency less of the base heal. But the cure potency of 50, I think, is equivalent to Medica 2, so after that, it does about the same, so it's 60 potency less than Medica 2. But that 60 potency off of the base heal is really noticeable, so that's something to keep in mind. And in Nocturnal Sects, again, it gives you that barrier, which does nothing if it crits, but I don't think Succor does anything if it crits either. So last 30 seconds. Shuffle allows you to draw a new card from your deck. Again, we'll talk about that later. Combust 2 deals unexpected damage, 45 potency over 30 seconds. Again, this doesn't have a base attack attached to it, so it can bypass accuracy requirements. Nocturnal Sect we already talked about. Actually, something we should talk about though is that you can only have 1 sect on at any given time, and you can switch between these, but not in combat. As soon as you enter combat, you cannot turn them off. Actually, I don't know if you can turn them. You can't turn them off, but why would you want to anyway? So you can't switch while you're in combat, but as soon as you leave combat, you can switch. So if you really wanted to, sometimes I like to do is go into Nocturnal Sect before a pull, put shields on the tank or everybody, and then switch to Diurnal Sect, because I prefer Diurnal Sect over Nocturnal Sect for most cases. Synastry, this is a pretty cool ability. It lets you put Synastry on a target, and any heals that you do to anyone else that isn't the target with Synastry on it, they will get 50% of the heal that you give to basically that other person. So if you put this on the tank and you go to heal your DPS and you heal them for 1000, say, which is a terrible example because your heals will be hitting for a lot more than that, hopefully at level 50. But if you hit them for 1000, then the tank will get 500 of that. Now, there are a lot of nice places to use this, especially in full parties where there's a main tank and an off tank and both are taking damage. But also in dungeons, it's pretty cool to use when your DPS take damage. Either throw it on the DPS if they're not going to take that much more damage, and just keep healing the tank normally, and they'll eventually get heals, or throw it on your tank and heal the DPS, so that you can focus on the DPS, but you can still give your tank some heals so they don't fall too low. So there are definitely a lot of nice places to put this. Definitely one of the better abilities that Astrologian has, in my opinion. Now, Gravity, you get, basically this is Flare for Astrologian. It does 200 potency, and it has this falling off, which Holy and Flare both got. So basically, it'll do 200 to the first enemy, and then less as there are more enemies. So 10% for the second, 20% for the third, etc. You can read it right there. So it sucks that you don't get this until 52, and it is targeted, so it isn't like around you like Holy is. So it is, that's why I compared it more to Flare. And it also doesn't have the stun of Holy attached to it. But it costs quite a bit of MP, so you ideally don't want to spam this too much, maybe a couple times per pull if you want, but try not to spam this too much. Malefic 2 deals more damage than Malefic 1, so use this when you have Malefic 2. That's all you really need to know. Time Dilation. This is again one of the better abilities that you have access to. Extends the duration of any beneficial effects you cast on a target by 15 seconds. Now these are abilities that you cast, so it doesn't work on abilities that maybe the party member has, so it won't work on Blood for Blood or Rampart or Vengeance or anything that they cast themselves. Only things you cast. So the things that benefit from this would be your aspected benefits, whether it be the duration of the shield, which probably doesn't matter because it'll probably fall off in the 30 seconds you have when you cast it, but more importantly probably the regen effect will get extended, or any of the card buffs that you happen to put on a party member are basically the two things that this is really good for. Is and it lasts its recast is 90 seconds, so really good skill. I like using this a lot in conjunction to some of the better cards you can draw, but again we'll talk about the cards in a bit. Collective Unconscious, extremely underwhelming, very disappointing skill. So what this does is it creates a shield around you, so it's like the shield that your Stola uses, but it has a different effect depending on the sect that you're in. If you're in Diurnal sect, it gives a regen to everyone inside 150 and it will last 18 seconds. Or if you're in Nocturnal sect, it reduces damage by 10% for 18 seconds. So basically it's a sacred soil around you. But the difference is you can't move or cast while this is up, or it will fall off. So actually this is basically White Mage and Scholar have their own versions of this, but they can cast it and they can still move and cast other things. So basically this is the same thing as Asylum for White Mages, or Sacred Soul as we said for Scholars. And there are definitely some areas where this can be used. There are, like, looking back on primals and boss fights, there are times when there's nothing to be targeted and just everyone takes a ton of damage. So like something like Geo Crush from Titan or something like that, and you can throw this down while there's nothing targeted and no one else has to do anything, and you don't have to do anything, and it can, you know, heal or reduce damage or whatever. But very underwhelming. There aren't a whole lot of places this can be used. I feel like, yeah, thematically it makes sense that you can't move because that's how your Stolas works, I guess. But yeah, the fact that you can't move or cast or do anything, just it sucks and it's very underwhelming. If it was changed so that you could just throw it down where you are and then move afterward and still cast and it will stay, that would definitely be a welcome change. It would definitely make it a lot better, and it would be a very good healing cooldown, which is something that Astrologians lack. But until then, very underwhelming. And yeah. And Celestial Opposition, the last ability you'll get, it will stun all nearby enemies, so this is proximity to you, and it will also extend the duration of beneficial effects casted on you and party members. So Time Dilation, I forgot to mention, you cannot cast on yourself, but this works on you and all party members, and it works on everything. It works on all buffs, so anything that the party member has, including your stuff. So things like we said earlier, like Blood for Blood or Rampart or Vengeance and stuff like that, will get extended by 5 seconds when you use this. It sits on a 2.5 minute cooldown, and again it also has that stun effect, so it has its uses. Ideally you want to use this just whenever there's multiple mobs is a good time to use it. I like to use it with Gravity, but Also, since it also has that effect to increase buffs, there are places to use this. It's really kind of hard to just come up with a situation out of nowhere, but you know, you can take what you know about this spell and apply it to things. And you know, it's a decent spell. 5 seconds. It's not a whole lot. It doesn't seem like a whole lot, but when you think of things like that, like vengeance and like raging strikes and buffs that generally don't have very long times, they don't last that long. 5 seconds is quite a long time when you compare it to that, so it definitely helps. Again, this is proximity use, so make sure that when you cast this, you're in range of the party members so they can actually get the buffs, because it only has a 10 yalm radius. And actually, that is something I'd like to talk about real quickly, is that all of our spells, like something that I found while we're healing, all of our spells' ranges, on Astrologian in particular, only have like a 15 yalm radius, all of our AoE heals, I mean. And it really sucks because a lot of the bosses in arenas are really big. Like, a lot of the bosses, like, will be fighting dragons and stuff, and their hitboxes are huge, so everyone's really spread out because the boss's hitbox is really big, and the arenas themselves are really big, so a lot of the times I won't actually hit all of the party members with my AoE spells because they're all spread out. And I feel like if we're going to have bigger arenas, we should get buffs to our AoE heals and abilities to just make our radiuses bigger so that we can actually hit everybody. That's just something I wish we had, because a lot of the times when I'm AoE healing, I'll miss that range DPS, or I'll miss the tank, or whatever, because everyone's just so spread out, and it's really hard to get into a position where you can hit everybody, because the arenas and the enemy hitboxes are so big and our radiuses aren't big enough. So that is just something I would like to see, but who knows if that will actually happen. Probably not, but yeah, whatever. So we've talked about that. We've talked about the abilities. Now, something I would like to come back to are the heals themselves before we talk about the cards. So the heals, they are weaker because of the potential that we have with our deck, the cards, which are really good. By the way, we'll talk about, I guess we should have talked about the deck first, but we're already talking about the heals. And yeah, because of the potential we have to support our party with the cards we draw, our heals suffer because of that. They're slightly lower, and on paper, looking at this, it's only 20 less than a cure or a physic, and this is only 10 potency less than a medica, and benefic 2 is only 30 potency less than cure 2. But when you're in a dungeon or a fight and you're using you use benefic and you use benefic 2, you use them a lot. Like in a dungeon run, you'll probably be using benefic and benefic 2, maybe 50 to 100 times in just one dungeon run. And when you add that up, that is a lot of lost potency. That is a lot of extra benefics and benefics 2 you have to do the same amount of healing that you would if it were a full cure or a cure 2. And yeah, it adds up, and it's something that is really hard to catch up on heals with the Astrologian, because we don't have any healing cooldowns. The only healing cooldown we have is Essential Dignity, and yeah, that's it. Everything else isn't really a healing cooldown. I guess you could say Sinistry is kind of like a healing cooldown. Not really, it's very situational, and it's not like you can use it to make your heals bigger or anything. The only healing cooldown we have is Essential Dignity, which is just a cure. It's just a heal. That's it. Light Speed is not a healing cooldown. It hinders your heals basically. If you're not moving, it hinders your heals, so it is not a healing cooldown. You could argue Time Dilation and Collective Conscious and Celestial Opposition are kind of healing cooldowns, because Time Dilation and Celestial Opposition can increase, your regen effects or something, and this Collective Unconscious can give you that shield or whatever. But again, they're not really pure healing cooldowns. They're not, you know, divine veil, or they're not presence of mind. You know, they're not, you know, they're not healing cooldowns is basically it. And we don't have any healing cooldowns, and we have lower heals, so we fall behind in heals, and we have a hard time getting people's HP bars back up to full. And that's just a problem that's a very strong weakness, I guess, a very noticeable weakness that Astrologian has, and that is something that hopefully we can get some changes to. I don't expect that we're actually going to get very like, we're not going to get our cure potencies equal to that of White Mage or anything like that. The things I do expect to see maybe is changes to our aspected, or the spells that get changed based on our sex. So aspected Helios, aspected Benefict, and collective unconscious. I expect changes to these three abilities in particular, just because these are unique to us. So maybe making them stronger would help alleviate that weakness that we do less heals. So fingers crossed for that. Who knows what will actually happen. And also that this changing light speed to not be a piece of crap would also really help. Maybe making it, I already said how I'd like it to be, but that rant is over. Let's talk about the cards, because this is really the core of what Astrologian is. And yeah, so we're just gonna go over the cards as they are, and then we'll go back and look at the abilities that we skipped over earlier. So first off, the balance increases the target's damage dealt by 10%, lasts for 15 seconds. The bowl, this is really good, by the way. The bowl is reduces target damage by 10%. So basically, this is a damage buff that you probably want to put on the DPS. I like to put it on melee DPS preferably, because casters and ranged DPS, a lot of their damage actually ends up depending on dots. I guess that's not true. Mostly Bard and Summoner depends on dots. So if they're not actually applying the dots with the balance, then it's just better to put it on the melee, I feel. So I like to put this on the melee preferably, because casters and ranged DPS, I have other cards that I like to use on them instead. The bowl, obviously you're going to want to put this on the tank or the off tank, or maybe you want to have an AoE version of the bowl for damage intensive phases, AoE damage intensive phases that you can put on the entire party. But mostly you're going to want to put this on the tank. Putting this on the tank along with an aspected Benefict that's in diurnal sec for, so with the regen, and then putting time dilation on it, OP. The arrow increases the attack speed by 10%. So again, this is where I said I like to put the balance on melee. This is where I like to put on casters and ranged DPS, because ranged DPS now, the Bard and the Machinist both have Wanderer's Minion and Gauss Barrel, which adds cast time to their abilities. So I like to put this on preferably Black Mages, Bards, or Machinists. Summoners too, I like to put the arrow on Summoners too, but mostly those three I listed off before: Black Mage, Bard, Machinist. Bard and Machinist only if they have their Wanderer's Minuet or Gauss Barrel up. The Spear, so I don't know if this spear is working as intended, but basically the way the spear does it reduces the target's ability recast time by 20%. So the way this works is, if you have the spear on you and then you use a cooldown, it'll reduce the cooldown by 20% then. So if I had the spear on myself and I used Luminiferous Aether, and so this normally has a 2-minute cooldown, it will reduce that by 20 seconds. So what is that? That's 24 seconds, I think, that it reduces by. So instead of a 2-minute cooldown, it'd have a 1 minute and 38-second cooldown instead. 36 cooldown, 1 minute and 36-second cooldown instead. But if I threw the spear on myself after I popped this, so if I popped Luminiferous Aether 10 seconds before I put the spear on myself, let's say that, and it has So we'll have 1 minute and 50 seconds left. It's not going to go down 24 seconds like it should. I feel like, so basically it only works, the spear only works if you actually use a cooldown or an ability while the spear is on you. So I feel like that's kind of dumb, and I feel like if they change the spear so that it works to reduce your current cooling down abilities, to reduce that time, it would be a lot better. The ways I like to use the spear, I like to put it on ninjas and machinists a lot, because they have ninjas, they have their ninjutsu, which sits on a 20-second cooldown, so it's pretty reliable that they'd end up using it, and machinists have their reloads and stuff. So again, this only works on classes that'll be using their cooldowns while it is active, so you really kind of have to coordinate a bit to use this. Obviously you can use it on yourself and then use, you know, your own cooldowns, because you know when you're going to be using your own cooldowns. But while you're in the duty finder and stuff, you don't know, you're not paying attention and timing when people pop their cooldowns and stuff, so this can be pretty hard to use effectively. But yeah, I feel like some changes to it could make it better. The Ewer reduces your MP cost by 20%. This is really good to use on healers, or maybe Dark Knights and summoners. Don't use these on black mages though. Black mages, I would not recommend using this on black mages, because black mages have, you know, their values. You know, they know how many casts they can get off before they have to switch into Blizzard or whatever, and this will just completely throw them off, and you don't want that. It'll just end up confusing them. You don't want that. Don't use these on black mages. Use them on yourself, or use them on the other healer. Dark Knights use MP as well, so Dark Knights will love you if you use this, because it makes it so a lot easier for them to sort of use their abilities less sparingly. And summoners can, I guess, benefit from this too, but mostly you're going to want to use this on yourself or on the other healer to save your MP for longer fights. Definitely for yourself too, because like I said, you will have MP problems because your cures, your heals do less potency, and you only have one ability that restores your MP. So really good to save for yourself on fights where you need to do a lot more healing, so something to keep in mind. And the Spire, which reduces TP costs by 20%. So basically, the Ewer is MP, this is TP. Not a whole lot of uses outside of long fights, because a lot of dungeon runs and dungeon bosses will die before people start to run out of TP, just because they don't last that long. So there really isn't that many places to use this except in long fights, and there aren't a whole lot of current fights that are long. So this is probably the most useless card you have. Well, it's not useless, but it's the card you'll want the least, I should say. I guess if you're AoEing, if you know your bards AoEing or your dragoons AoEing, and they're using their TP that way, this could be good to use, I guess. But other than that, not really. Also, this will make your TP costs, since it's by 20%, the all TP costs as of now are multiples of 10. This will completely screw that up. And when I get the Spire on me while I'm playing, you know, my bard or my monk, I get really irritated. So that's fun. Now, since we've talked about all the cards, let's go back and look at all the abilities that we have. Draw allows you to draw your card from your deck. Pretty basic. Recast is 30 seconds. Now, the cooldown for this won't actually start until after you do something with your card. So after you use it, or you use one of the other abilities, one of the other 3 abilities you have to interact with your card. It lasts 15 seconds. So what that means is that you can hold on to your card for 15 seconds, and if you don't use it or use one of the other abilities on your card, it will just disappear, and then it'll go, and then draw will go on cooldown. This is instant cast, so you're gonna want to use this basically just in between your heals. So one thing I like to do, use draw before the pull, so that you just kind of have that card and you can decide what to do with it in the second or two that everyone's running to the boss. And while you're in combat, use your cure or your heal or whatever ability that you need to cast. Use draw, and then start using your next heal or whatever as you're drawing your card. The reason I say that is because regardless of what you draw, you're going to need to have that small amount of time to decide what you want to do with your card anyway, and you don't want to be not casting anything while you're drawing and then waiting for your next waiting to do something with your card. So use your cure, use draw, and then start your next cure, and then while your cure is going off, you can look at what card you drew, and then you can start deciding what you want to do with it. Don't stop your heals to decide what to do with your card when you draw it. Just keep curing. That is something very important that a lot of Astrologians have a hard time doing, is they get so focused on their cards that they start falling behind in heals, which is really bad because you don't have a lot of abilities to help you catch up on your heals. So that's something that you really need to work on as an Astrologian, is drawing your cards, making quick judgments on how to use it so you can get more cards in a certain fight, because the faster you're using your cards and deciding what to do with it, the more draws you're going to get in any given encounter. So that's something you really need to work on, is drawing your cards, keeping up with your heals while you're drawing, and deciding what to do with your next with your cards. So yeah, work on that. Now Royal Road. This is interesting. So you can take the card you just drew and you can put it back into the deck. So you put it back into the deck, draw goes on cooldown. You have no draw, have no card to use because you put it back in the deck and draws on cooldown. But it'll make your next card you use, remember, next card you use, not the next card you draw, because you can with other abilities you can actually save a card with spread, but we'll talk about that next. So the next card you use will have the ability. Now, depending on the card you put into the deck, so it's the card you put into the deck, not the card that you draw or use next, will determine what ability or what bonus effect you get on the card. So if you put the bowl, which is this, or the balance, back into the card with Royal Road, it will make it so that the potency of whatever you use next is increased by 150%. So basically, if you used it on the balance, instead of 10%, it'd be 15% extra damage. If you used it on the bowl, it'd be 10 or 15% damage reduced. If you use it on the ear, it'd be 30%. So that's what it does. If you put the arrow or the spear, which is the increased speed or the ability recast, then it will reduce the potency to half of your next card that you use, but it'll instead make it an AoE. Now, in dungeons and 4-man content, I don't like using the arrow or spear Royal Roaded, just because it's really hard to get the biggest bang out of your buck for this, because you're only getting 4 people with it at most, which is only 200 potency. So it's only like 50% more potency than if you were to use the bowl of the balance, and it's not the double duration. So I only like using this in full party content, so 8-man content basically is what I'm trying to say, is the places where I like to use this. And it's actually really hard to get a card that actually works with everybody in your party. So the balance, everyone could use this, of course. The arrow, I guess everyone could use this. The spear, yeah, I guess. But the ear and the spire, not everyone uses TP, not everyone uses MP. And the bowl, this will do nothing if there isn't any AoE damage going out. So it's really hard to use the AoE Royal Road effect efficiently. But yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. And if you put the ewer or the spire, so the ones that reduce MP or TP costs, which you will be actually Royal Roading these a lot, just because there aren't a whole lot of instances where you'll need the TP one and the MP one. Again, probably not going to need it. It definitely has more uses than the spire will, but you're probably not going to need this in most casual content. So you'll probably be Royal Roading that a lot, and it'll make double duration of your next card that you use. So It's actually really good to use, actually, because you can Royal Road extend a balance or a bowl, which is 30 seconds, which is absolutely insane. Having a 30-second extra 10% damage or 30-second reduced damage is ridiculous. And then you can time dilation that and celestial opposition that. You can make some pretty awesome plays with your cards, but unfortunately it's not enough sometimes because RNG is RNG, and can't do anything about that really. Now, unfortunately, like I said, it is RNG completely what you get, but you do have spread and shuffle to sort of help control that, to, I guess, play the RNG, I guess. Spread allows you to take a card you drew and store it away. Now, problem I have with this, it can only be executed in combat, which is really dumb. There's so many times where walking to the next pull and I just want to use spread because my draw is off cooldown while we're walking to the next pull because I drew something nice and I don't want to have to wait and then extend the cooldown of my draw to wait and to use the card, or to have to Royal Road it because it's going to wear off before we get to the next pull. So I feel like they should completely get rid of this executed only in combat thing because it's dumb. I mean, the class is underwhelming as it is now, so I feel like get rid of that can only be executed in combat thing. I mean, it sits on a minute cooldown, and something to keep in mind again, your spread will not go on cooldown until you use the card that you've spreaded. So it won't go on cooldown until you use it. So this, when you spread a card, this will change to be the card's effect. So if you spread a bull, for example, the spread on my bar will change into a bull. So, and it won't turn back into spread until after we use that stored bull. So the cooldown, what I'm trying to say is the cooldown won't start until after you use the card that you stored away. And also, again, going back to Royal Road, if you stored a card, if you stored, let's say, the balance, and then you drew an ewer, and then you Royal Roaded it for the duration buff, and then you use the balance that you stored away, it would get the effect of your buff. So like I said, with Royal Road, it isn't the next card you draw that gets the effect, it's the next card you use. And aside from spread, we also have shuffle, which sits on a 90-second cooldown, which is pretty long. Allows you to return the card you drew to your deck and draw another. Now, because you're putting the card back into your deck, you can draw the same card back, which sucks, but it makes sense, because, you know, it sucks, but it makes sense, is what I'm trying to say. So if you drew the Spire and you use shuffle, you can draw the Spire again just as much as you could draw anything else. It's a redo. It's basically what it is. It's a redraw. It's a redo for your draw. That's all it is. You can do that once every 90 seconds. So that's the deck. Those are your cards. The deck has a lot of potential to be cool, and using the deck is really awesome. It feels really cool to play the Astrologian, but it's still, because of RNG with the cards, and because we have no healing cooldowns really, and our potencies are lower, the Astrologian is just kind of in this weird place. It isn't a very effective healer on its own, and you will notice this in dungeons. Once you start overgearing content, it isn't so bad, but when you're first starting out, you know, when you get to 60 for the first time and you don't have your log gear or anything like that, you're going to have a hard time healing for sure, because it's just, we have lower potencies, and I feel like no cooldowns, and I guess what I'm trying to say is very ranty, but we need some changes. We need some buffs or something. We need some changes to help make us a better healer, because right now we're a great support. I will say that when we have a white mage, preferably a white mage or even a scholar, because we can go into diurnal sect and sort of help with the scholar, but preferably I like to pair up with a white mage when I'm on Astrologian. But when we're with one of the other healers and we're supporting, it's really great, because, you know, the cards are awesome and we have some pretty interesting cooldowns to help support wise, but just not healing wise. So when it comes to healing intensive fights, or when we're alone in a dungeon, it's noticeable when we're healing, and it's really hard to keep up sometimes. Even now when I'm geared and doing stuff, when the tank takes hits, or when party members start making mistakes and health bars start going down, and you need to spam your bigger heals and you're running out of MP and you don't have anything, and Luminar, your Shroud or Aether or whatever is on cooldown, and you don't have it anymore, and you're running out of MP. It's a mess basically, and we could use some changes is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, so this video was like 50 minutes, which is absolutely insane. It was very ranty, it was very not smooth looking back on it, but I had some things to say, and hopefully hopefully you can take what I said and apply it to something. I don't know, I guess. Yeah, that was this video. Something I did forget though to talk about, and it was something I really wanted to talk about, but I ended up skipping over it somehow, is that Benefic. I do not like the additional effect on Benefic, and there's a reason why. Because similar to how Cure has the 15% chance to proc your Cure 2 to cost no MP, Benefic has a similar thing, 15% chance to make the next Benefic 2 have no cast time. I don't like that, because what it's basically saying is it will give your Benefic 2 no cast time, which, great, you can move around or you can do this or that, but really it doesn't help, really, because the only time it helps is when you need to catch up on heals, which sadly we do need to catch up on heals a lot. But if you're playing right, you wouldn't need the instant cast time of Benefic 2. What would be nice is maybe instant cast time plus half MP cost on Benefic 2, or just give it the same thing that Cure does to Cure 2, make it free without the instant cast time. I don't know, I don't like that. I don't like that effect. Amongst other things with the Astrologian, I actually ended up, because the Astrologian was so underwhelming, I ended up actually leveling my White Mage to 60. Immediately after I got this to 60 and geared, I leveled my White Mage, and I've been using that mostly to do Alexander and the Primals with. Because the Astrologian is just kind of in this weird spot, and really, it needs changes. It's very underwhelming. And hopefully we can get some of those changes, because the Astrologian, despite being a very underwhelming healer, and despite having these RNG locked cards, it's fun to play, because the cards, when you get those moments when the cards just line up and you get really cool Royal Roaded effects, and you can time dilation, celestial opposition, the effects, and all this cool stuff, it's really awesome, and it's really fun to play, and it's really cool. But it's just underwhelming. So hopefully we can get some changes to the Astrologian soon, and hopefully it can be a better healer soon, so that we can play Astrologian and not have to worry about falling behind in healing or whatever. Because yeah, I think it's a really fun class, and I want to be able to play it more. But sometimes it just feels like I'm playing the Astrologian, and I have to work so much more harder than I do on my White Mage to essentially do the exact same thing that the White Mage can do so much easier and so much more efficiently. So if you enjoyed this video, thank you for watching this long. Hopefully you did enjoy some of it. I understand it wasn't the best video, I'm not very experienced in these type of things, but hopefully you're able to take something out of this, and hopefully you're not too discouraged on playing the Astrologian, because like I said, despite the problems it has, despite how underwhelming it can feel sometimes, it is a very fun class to play. So hopefully you guys can have some fun with it, and hopefully we can get some changes so that we can be a little bit more better in parties and stuff. So my name was Tsuki. I do lots of gameplays and stuff on the channel mostly. I'm thinking I'd want a little bit more time before I start making guides for, you know, maybe the Astrologian and the White Mage and maybe the Scholar and maybe other things too. But yeah, I definitely want some more time to experience the classes to get a better feel for them all before I make a full-blown guide. Uh, but yeah, I have made guides before, and I made 2 guides before, and they received pretty positive feedback. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing that guide or seeing some gameplay or something, then stick around, and hopefully I can give you guys some entertainment. And so until then, I will see you guys